when it turned out that astrology was real, then I had to rethink what I thought the world was made of. And so, because especially in the wake of traditional religions that don't meet the problems of the day, I have been aware that what we need to do is assemble some kind of spirituality that will meet the problems and the situation, the circumstance of the day. Hello and welcome, Brian. Thank you so much for being here. I have fallen off and I haven't been here for a long time, so thank you so much for rocking with me another time.
Oh, I'm so excited, brother, to be here. It's not falling off. It's just, it was a hell of a summer, and now that pumpkin spice season is upon us and the witches are out, and everybody's wearing their weird hats and doing things we won't mention to politicians, we're here and we're ready to roll.
Yeah, sure.
The Etsy witches are in season, and so we're back too. You know what I mean?
Indeed. It is a season of the witch over here, and so we are. Do you think that worked?
So no,
I don't think so either.
So we were just doing, Marissa and I were just doing a little bit of deep dive on this, and Jess actually had a really good comment, which is just like the Seattle Mariners Etsy witch is real, but the Charlie Kirk one is fake. You know what I mean? Like,
okay. What's the reasoning there?
Well, you look. So the Jezebel article lady, she ordered something that wasn't supposed to do long-lasting physical harm. Like, she was like, I want this dude's mic to go off every time he tries to podcast. I want like a light haunting. You know what I mean? Like, I want I want him to have what you and I would probably call like crossed conditions as a way to like make his life. He makes other people's lives hard, make his life hard. Like, that was kind of the gist. I think if you want to do something, I don't think it's easy to assassinate people with magic. And I think if you wanted to do something that way, it'd probably be a little more than like, I hope he gets boils. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that is. Sure. So I would say. Well,
I have seen curses go off the rails, though.
I have too. I mean, I had one go off the rails on me. I had one that went further than I intended it to go. So I think I've told this story before. I'll tell it now. It's fine. My son's mom had a advisor in grad school who was riding her real hard to the point that her mental health was suffering. And I had this thought where I was like, dude, if it wouldn't put me in jail, I would just go punch this dude in the mouth right now. Like the thing I don't like here is that I'm going to have to go to jail over something when he's been the one who's been really abusive this entire time. And this is much more of a like back off kind of thing. So I did a piece of Malefica, basically with the intention of, I want the equivalent of punching him in the mouth. That's what I want, right? I want him to back off. Well, he fell down some stairs and he got permanent brain damage that kept him from doing the kind of math that he was using to hassle her. Like, they were talking about stats problems. He couldn't do it anymore, so he had to just accept whatever she said and leave her alone, let her do her stuff. Now, his life was fine other than that. Didn't take his career, didn't take anything else from him. He had a little bit of a recovery time, which is, frankly, the equivalent of what could have happened had I punched him in the mouth, right? Like, you know, if I'd hit
close to some stairs.
Yeah, or if I'd hit him outside in the street and he'd fallen and hitting his head on the sidewalk, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's in the zone. It was not my intention to give him permanent brain damage. I really just wanted him to fucking back off. But you're doing a violent act, and violence. Oh, I think blipped for a second.
Yep, there was a little blip there. Yeah.
So I'm just saying, you're doing a violent act, and when you do violence to someone, things can pop off in ways you don't expect. I mean, that's true. But I think there's a big difference between I did the equivalent of a face punch, and face punch kind of things happened, and, you know, I asked for him to get bad acne and he was assassinated.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like the magnitude's a little off. You know what I mean?
Sure. Now, I think that the more interesting question here, rather than did the magic work or did the magic not work, and is the assassination attempt a result of this curse or whatever? I think the more interesting question is what happens to Etsy witches in the cultural moment that we're in right now.
So, I'm going to pause for just 1 second.
Sure.
Wait. So we were watching Strange Aeon's channel about this, right? And she sort of breaks it down. And she's not magical, right? Which is actually kind of hilarious from a magical point of view. She's like, "What do you mean you rub an egg on yourself?" You know what I mean? It's
sure.
But she went to the website of the witches who had supposedly sold the curse to Jezebel, right? Mm-hmm. And they're really riding the line of we didn't do it, but we did it. You know what I mean? To try to get some money in. And they offer stuff like generational curses, curse a whole bloodline kind of shit.
Lord. Okay.
Bro, what are you doing? It was $1,300 to curse someone's entire bloodline.
That's a deal.
First off, it was a steal. Get them while they're hot, guys.
Right.
But secondly, what are you doing? You know what I mean? What are you doing? And so, Joanna Farrar has always said, we got to be careful when they realize this stuff is actually real.
Yeah, that's what I'm concerned about right now. Yeah. Because especially I think of it with the astrological timing that Neptune in Pisces has been really good for psychedelic medicine, and it's been really good for astrology and tarot and all of that. I became I got into the whole craft in that time, and so did everybody I know. Yeah. We all came up in this moment. Chris Brennan turned into the most important astrologer who ever lived, or something like this during this time period, right? Yeah. And it's because the culture was ready for it, and Neptune and Pisces timed that. So then, as Neptune moves into Aries, then we can expect that to dry up in some kind of way. I thought it was really interesting that as soon as Neptune moved into Pisces, then Elon Musk got into trouble with ketamine, and so ketamine stopped being the darling of psychedelic medicine and started being the evil force that makes politicians crazy. And so, so I would expect the Neptune and Pisces things, which had been so beloved during the 14 years of Neptune and Pisces, to see at least some kind of backlash during this time.
Well, one of the things Strange Aeon points out, and that has always been true as well, is that both sides, so it's not just even the astrology, witchcraft, side of things. The religious magic, the Christian magic, has also been ramped up to 11. You got people out here doing giant prayer things for Donald Trump, or circling state capitals like the walls of Jericho. You know what I mean? A lot of fucking Christian magic being done too. And the thing this is not me being a doom thing. I just think it's a phase thing here, right? What do you feel about Neptune and Aries and the idea of the mind war? For sure. Or the war of witches. You know what I mean? And I think it's kind of everybody upskilled. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Everybody got good at this, and now they're going to be doing it. You know what I mean? They're going to be doing it in a very everyone takes it seriously kind of fashion. So
you don't think that it's going to become illegal, or that there is going to be some kind of lawfare against the idea of astrology being real, or witchcraft, or these kinds of things? You don't think that crusades, what's the word I'm looking for here? Witch hunts. You don't think that witch hunts are going to be going down during this time? You think that armies of witches are going to battle during Neptune and Pisces? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Sort of. I think it could take. I think witch hunts are a form that the mind war can take, right? Where the religious decide to use state power on their side to do things, and they tend to be better organized for state power stuff, but again, I think it's because people are going to start taking things seriously. So it'd be interesting to look back at like the English Civil War, for example, like that time period. People really took astrology and magic very, very seriously, sort of the mid to late 17th century. And a lot of our texts come from that time period because during the Civil War, the typical royal censorship laws were taken down, and there were a whole bunch of printing presses. So everybody starts printing manuals on magic. And so I think it might look a little bit more like that. Obviously, I think that if you have authoritarian governments, they don't like magic. That's
Sure.
not state approved. You know what I mean? So
Except their magic.
exactly, yeah. And so you may also see a rise again of the sort of CIA, like astral projection kind of programs and that kind of stuff too. But I think so. The thing I think I am trying to prepare for and think with is a better understanding of where magic is real all over the place in my life, which is something you and I talk about. Obviously, this is what this podcast really is. But like, what does it mean to introduce a spirit of peace into a room? Like, and I think what's going to happen is it's going to require us to actually get really good, to be really good at this. If everybody's a gunslinger, you got to be good if you want to walk through it. You know what I mean? And so, that's the piece I'm most concerned about. I think you'll see laws and stuff go back and forth. I think, I think it will be worse if only one side is playing that war. So, like, if only for an example, if only the theocratic Christian right are doing magic and doing the state-approved material and are doing this kind of stuff, then I think you're in a much worse position than if everybody who can do magic is doing magic for good outcomes, right? You know what I mean? Like,
Sure. Yeah, I think that in the upcoming, it's not just Neptune in Pisces for 14 years, but we're also in this moment of Saturn and not just Neptune in Aries, but Saturn moving into Aries as well.
Right.
And so Saturn is back in Pisces right now, but only for a minute. Saturn will be back in Aries for good, for keepsies, in February of 2026, and we'll be there for 2.5 years. And I think during that, I've been thinking about that as like the Wild West, like,
oh, interesting.
Anything is possible out here. The rules are not the rules. Piracy rules the day. Whoever it was Gordon that brought Pirates of the Caribbean to my attention. It was like, hey, there's one rule, and it is, can you do the thing or can you not do the thing? And if it can be done, then it can be done. And so people, in the era of AI, deepfakes, and all the rest of that, like anything is going to be possible. And so, but, trust no one, but everything is permitted and nothing is real, right?
Yeah. And, when we get into those time periods, my parents very much feel this as a death of truth, end of meaning kind of experience, coming from that sort of boomer generation. I, on the other hand, am like, oh, thank God. I feel that people who are creative and persuasive and offering, interesting viewpoints and things that are seductive and things that can move things, you have more of a chance to be heard because people are going to base it on basically vibes. Do you make me feel good? Does my body respond positively to what you just said or not? Because I don't have any other metric of handling reality other than results, right? I did your 30-day juice cleanse. Did my life get better? No. Okay, cool. No more juice cleanses. That was a bad idea. I think, and so I'm very positive that there's a lot we can do to take things. We just need people to pick up the mantle, right? We need people to be willing to talk about these stuff, to push things for the good, or what I think is good, or what you think is good. You know what I mean? But like to get out there, because another way we could think about this too is like an open forum. right? Where or like the old Library of Alexandria setup, where like every teacher's got his little nook, and he's just like, "What's up? I'm teaching about this, and I'm this guy, and I have this many students." And you're like, "That guy sounds good. I'm gonna listen to what he has to say," you know. Or that.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's like nooks and niches is what the internet is turning into, right?
Yeah.
There is no one universal mainstream narrative anymore. And so all you can do is navigate through your nooks. And that is very clearly the direction that we're going. And I'm not sure that magic, I'm not sure that the masses are going to do magic in the way that you are sort of hoping for here, because especially once we get into this place of like nothing is real, then it's going to be real easy to get skeptical again about people who think that the stars have some kind of influence on everyday life and this kind of thing, you know? I think that is going to be really easy to do. And with state-sponsored, you know, giant sigil magic in the form of branding and this kind of thing, you know, like we've got the co-brander in chief happening right now. You know what I mean? Like with all of that taking place, I don't know that vibes-based prayer circles are coming to the punk house near you. You know what I mean?
Maybe the thing that's interesting in this time frame for me is the actual dearth of traditional religion. They do not have the numbers anymore.
This is true. This is very true.
And so it changes the dynamic a little bit. Like this particular like theocratic grab right now feels like kind of a like, well, if we don't get it now, we're not going to get it. Do you know what I mean? Like it feels kind of a desperate push. And so it's going to be new things is the thing. And that's, again, for the English Civil War kind of stuff. And by the way, I don't think America is going to have a civil war. I'm just picking this because it was a really interesting time period for a lot of ideas happening at once. But, you know, you had the levelers and the ranters and the Presbyterians, and like they're all nominally Christian, but like the ideas are wildly different from each other. And, you know, I think that's going to be more the landscape. I think it's too split up to have one Roman Catholic and Holy Church take over everything and get people in line. You know, so. And
I am aware of that, and I'm aware of also the crisis of meaning that comes from that for regular people who, for the most part, people are not going to be nerdy the way that I'm nerdy. I want to get deep into it and figure out what's happening and all this. For the most part, people want someone else to do that and tell them what's going on and how to do the stuff. You know what I mean? And so for that reason, I have put together a series of, insights as to what I think the world is made of. I had been, it was especially after I taught the fundamentals of astrology last year that I had to create an introduction to that course. So, I could teach planet science, houses, and aspects, and like how to tell it all as a story and how to do readings, and so I did that. But then at the end of that, after I had created all that, I was like, okay, so what's my introduction going to be? Like, how do I talk about what astrology is in the first place? And what I noticed was that when I was coming up, astrology was not supposed to be real. And so then when it turned out that astrology was real, then I had to rethink what I thought the world was made of. And so because, especially in the wake of traditional religions that don't meet the problems of the day, I have been aware that what we need to do is assemble some kind of spirituality that will meet the problems and the situation, the circumstance of the day. So I went about working that out, and so I'm working on this course now, which is going to come out pretty soon. It's called Which Way to Wisdom, and it is, it centers on the question and the idea of like what are we even doing out in the world, and what, based on traditions that already exist and based on observations about what is true in the world, then what can we make of a way to live here. And so I've been working on that for a little while, and the way that I think about astrology working is primarily due to shape. Like it is literally the shape of the heavens. And so I have spent a bunch of time working on shape, and here, bam, there is a video here. Now, there does seem to be a shape to things, and that's why I like Taoism a lot, and Taoism is probably going to come up a lot through this. Again, we are in a space where cultural appropriation is something that we need to be aware of. So again, part of the reason why I am so wed to the question and rather than the answer is a sense of like, okay, well, so I don't necessarily understand Taoism, especially not better than someone who was raised in that tradition or something like that, or someone who reads Chinese or something like this, right? Like those people have a better understanding of Taoism, right? And so I'm not trying to compete with that. I'm just, every time I engage with a Taoist principle, then I can be like, okay, well, what if that were true? What does that make me think? What does that make me feel? What would that mean to me? And what would flow from that, right? And I can improve my predictive model based on what comes up through that process of questioning and inquiry, right? So I like the Tao because it translates to the way. And so it's not the way in the sense of like, the way, the truth, and the light, or what has been translated as the middle way in Buddhism. There's a certain sense of like a correct way to live, like a method that is the right thing, right? And so that is not what I think is meant by the translation, the way of the Tao. The way is just the way that it is. Like things happen in the way that they happen, and that way is the Tao. It's the shape of things. Like stuff happens in the way that it happens, and that way seems to be the thing that governs all of the stuff. So I have talked about this in terms of shape before, and I think that shape is an excellent way to think about it. So if you think about shape, then shape seems to be at the root of the way that everything behaves in the world. And so this is true at the level that is sort of like intelligible and understandable for intuitive at the human scale, right? So we can think about like the ways that tools and screws are shaped in a certain kind of way, like the way that a screw fastens things better than a nail fastens things, because a nail is straight, right? And so a nail can just pull out, whereas a screw has these ridges and it screws in, it goes in this corkscrew pattern, and then that creates friction that makes it more difficult to just pull the screw out than it is difficult to pull a nail out, right? And so that is created by the shape of the screw in the first place. The tool is shaped in a particular kind of way that makes it behave in a way that is different from other ways of being in the world, right? And so shape matters at that level. And then we can think about so imagine that there's a coastline, and at the coastline, then there's ocean on one side, and then there's a mountain range, and then there's land on the other side of that, right? And so the mountains could be so high that weather that blows in off of the ocean can't get past the mountains. And so even though there's a whole body of water over here and there's rain that wants to come off the water, there can be a desert on the other side of the mountains just because the mountains are so tall that the clouds don't get over it. And so what we've got there is the shape of the land has determined the whole behavior of climate patterns, and then that goes on to describe the behavior because of the evolutionary niche that shows up in the desert over there. So the plants and the animals and the fungi behave in a certain way on either side of the mountain, and that is because of the shape of the land, right? This idea of shape matters at the geological level as well as at the level of humans and tools and screws and all the rest of that, right? We can go up further from there and see that there is a shape to the solar system and the cosmos, the space at large. And so that's what astrology is. And that is, I have already done a course on the foundations of astrology. It's called Astrology from the Ground Up. You can check that out at the website, ZamboniFunk.com. I think it's a good one, and it can help you to make predictions about the times that we're in, as well as your life or the life of your business or the life of your friends and family, et cetera, et cetera. But the reason that works is because of shape. So the sky is in a particular shape at a particular moment, and what flows from that moment is based on the shape of the container of that moment. So the way that I always think about that is like a pitcher. So if you've got a pitcher, right, and in that pitcher you've got water, then you can pour the water out of the pitcher, and because it's got the little lip on the end of it, then the water is gonna flow in a particular way based on the shape of the vessel, right? And then maybe you don't have a pitcher, maybe it's a pot, and so it's just got an edge around it, right? And so the water is going to flow differently out of that than it would flow out of a pitcher. Or maybe you've got something that has a jagged edge on it, and so then that is going to flow differently still from the way that the water flows out of either the pitcher or the pot. The shape of the vessel matters when you are pouring your substance out. When your flow comes from the vessel, then it comes from the vessel based on its shape. And so that is at least why I think I'm right, but I think the way that astrology works is that it sort of takes a snapshot of the shape of the vessel in that moment, and then what flows forth from that is characterized by the shape of the vessel. And so astrology is literally the shape of the sky in a particular moment, and then that can be used to do all sorts of fun stuff that astrology can do. We can also take this same concept of shape down a few sizes, and so down past the geological scale, down past the human scale, and get down to the molecular level. And so molecules are shaped in a particular kind of way. And because they are shaped in this way, then they have the interactions that they have out in the world. And so all of chemistry and biochemistry, all of life happens because molecules can be shaped in this or that way. This is the reason why enzymes work, right? So enzymes are proteins that are in a particular shape, and then they can find receptors that are in a particular shape that goes with that. And so they can sit in there, and that space is, or that interaction between the enzyme and the receptor, that can make a thing happen or that can stop a thing from happening. And so this is the reason why drugs work, and this is the reason why all of the reactions, all of the chemical reactions that happen in the world can happen because of the shape of things, because things are shaped in a particular way, even at the subatomic level, where we're noticing that we've got protons, neutrons, and electrons in particular arrangements, and then they can bind or not bind to one another based on the arrangement of those subatomic particles. I don't know what comes beyond subatomic particles if we get smaller than that, but I'm going to guess that shape continues to matter even down at that scale. And if we were to get smaller than that, shape would still continue to matter at that scale as well. Shape, it seems to me to be the underlying thing that describes the way that things are. So shape and way to me are more or less synonyms. And so I think about, and so then we can also think about like a story has a particular shape, like the hero's journey, for example, where you've got your like hero character who's a nobody and doesn't matter in the world. And then he is like pulled out onto some journey that is difficult, and he's got to go and he's got to face a dragon, and it's real difficult. And then, and in doing that, he learns about himself and about the world at large. And then he comes back and he's strong, and he's back at home and all that, right? Like the sort of like narrative arc that is, that arc is a kind of shape, right? And so shape works not only at the physical level, but at the metaphorical level as well. And so shape is something that I will come back to again and again and again. And it is part of what I like about shape is that it is observable. And so there's something about the shape of things that creates the world that we live in. And so that can be further extrapolated to, well, what if I put myself into a certain shape, or what if I live a certain kind of shape? Then does that interact with the world around me? And the answer is yes, it does. And so then how does that work? What happens if I do that? And that is kind of more of that fuck around and find out, which is the highest principle in the universe. So part of what I'm noticing here is that the world is the way that it is, and that stuff like spirits or magic, or like the idea that astrology would work, it seems like kind of supernatural, right? It seems like something is going on that is not a part of the world. But in fact, that is how the world works. That is the way. And so magic and spirits and all of this stuff that might be thought of as supernatural is not supernatural. It is in universe. It is part of the cosmos. It is super natural. It is natural. It's the nature of things. It's the way. It is how we live in the world. If we can sort of like, especially if we are in this mindset of like, I don't know what's true. I know for a fact that I don't know what's true, right? Then, there have been years and years of people saying that there are spirits in the plants, or spirits in rivers, or these kinds of things. And so then we come to the post-Enlightenment age, and it's like, well, that's cute, but there are no spirits in there. And then it's like, well, do you know that? Do you know that there's no spirit in there? Like, if you can only perceive like 6% of the light, then what else might be happening here? There's 94% of stuff that is going on that do you know? What do you know? And so like, there's a certain sense of like, if you can be humble before the data that you can't perceive all of, and that you can't sort in the proper order, then you can have a certain amount of humility around what might be true in the world. And there's a certain sense of like, okay, well, so people have been saying this for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Like, maybe there's something to it, right? Maybe there's something going on. Maybe there is a kind of rule structure that follows the way, the shape, that would allow for the existence of a spirit entity or something like this, right? And that the way that spirits exist must also be in constant flux, the way that the world is in constant flux. Octavia Butler said that God is change, and I have not been able to disprove that. Something about the way of change is like the creation event is ongoing. It's something that like, so like this moment creates the next moment, creates the next moment all the time. And so the way that we interact in this moment literally creates the next moment all the time. And so that means that I, as an individual, am a kind of God form because I engage in the creation of the next moment, right? Each one of us has this capacity to create the next moment. And so then there's all sorts of downstream stuff there when it comes to like thinking about free will and fate and all the rest of that. And we don't need to get into that right now, but those are fun rabbit holes to get into because like what is possible if this is all true, right? What is possible? That is the real question that we're getting to here. No questions, only answers. Okay. So with that in mind, what do you think about this, Brian?
I think the shape argument is really compelling as a way into this discussion, right? Of what is meaning and how do we work with this, because it incorporates a lot of things that I personally have found very useful. So, learning the Tai Chi forms, is a way of teaching your body to take a shape. It is a series of shapes that you use to investigate things. The kind of material you're talking about in terms of like the arc of a story, the hero's journey, all the way down to molecules, like this kind of thing. What's great about it is that it is observable. You can come to it and say, let me test out my understanding of this. Let me see if this does what I think it does. Let me see if this shape is what I think it is. And I think one piece, just to kind of pull off a reaction to the video, is I think people can underestimate your point at the end about ongoing change. Like if you presume that the way of the acorn is to be an acorn, you are in for a surprise. You know what I mean? Like the way of the acorn is to be the oak. But if you don't connect those, if you don't realize what's happening there, you're going to massively misunderstand what's going on. And then if you're understanding that the oak is part of a forest, that these things have a composition cycle, that part of the shape of this is to eventually decay over a 600-year time period and feed all the stuff around you. So, we have to be very curious about the shapes we encounter. We have to be very humble that we don't know the entire process that's happening. But we also, we're called to engage in our own form of being or becoming and dip into this as well and do our own changing and be a part of the change, right? So I love that it allows us to deal with the question of why don't I know everything? And how can I be wrong? How can I do this stuff? And how can I use that to continue to improve as I understand shapes better? If you think you're in one kind of a story and you find yourself you're actually in a different kind of story, that can be a jolt. You know what I mean? And so I was thinking with the way that when we undercredit how much things are changing dynamically all together all at once, we end up being like, I can name the Tao, to your point. Like, and you're like, you probably can't. You're probably not right about it in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I think about the shape of time all the time. And what I've been thinking about a lot recently is reading. And so there's like the idea of like an astrology reading or something like that, but then also reading the room or reading for filth or something like this, right? It's this idea of, or if we want to use a time analogy, you clocked it.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I feel like a primary skill for people to acquire, especially in this moment of piracy ruling the day and everything is permitted and nothing is real, is like we really need to get good at like media literacy. You know what I mean? Yeah. We need to get good at reading what's happening, what's actually going on in here. I need to clock the situation. What is the person, what is the author trying to convey? Why are they trying to convey that? Who's paying for it? Like all that sort of stuff. And then using that in order to feed one's own ability to create the world, the kind of environment that they want to live in, you know?
I was, to pick something from the news, where I think this is actually fairly relevant, had the rather disturbing moment of the president thinking there's a war in Portland. And while I initially assumed this was just rhetoric, his conversation with a reporter and the mayor of Portland, where he's like, "What do you mean it's different than what I see on TV?" Like, as if he's been lied to, is an exact example of this, of what we're talking about, right? Like, the media literacy there to understand that you're consuming certain things and it's shaping your worldview and it's understanding how stuff is, and that maybe a trip to Portland might be in order, just to walk around, see what's there, see all the lovely babies with their nose rings serving you coffee, and it's not on fire. It's fine, you know.
Seems like the kind of guy who could afford a trip like that.
Sure. Just a little fuck about, you know, just a little fuck about in Portland, a little vacay, and see how it looks to you. And you know, in that line of things, you know, what we would call in that case the Gnostic experience, right? So you're reading. Oh, actually, this is a weird. I'm going to go on a weird tangent, but you have triggered something in my brain.
Love it. Let's bring it on.
I highly, as always, lots of shout outs to Dr. Justin Sledge and the Esoterica channel. If people haven't,
friend of the channel. Mm-hmm. Shout out to Justin Sledge.
Fantastic material.
Good to see you. Thanks for watching, homie.
Yeah. He's been doing a series on Merkava mysticism, so the mysticism of the throne, and this long-standing Jewish tradition. And by the way, it's a fascinating series, and he makes a really good point about this being possibly the oldest continual mystic movement that we have documentation for, which is a thing to sit with if you're into magic anyway. But he talks about that at the time this stuff's coming out, there's kind of two main ways of getting into mystical states. There's a sort of rabbinical idea of exegesis, pulling out meaning from the text. And then there's the sort of Merkava, you know, mystic guys who are like, no, I'm going to go into God's throne room and see what's up, you know. Mm-hmm. And both are useful, right? And both can lead to mystic understanding. And I think that sometimes those of us who really like to fuck around and find out can be like, no, the Gnostic stuff's the real stuff. It's like, no, reading gives you a lot. Like that idea was when you did it right, you had an epiphany that was like receiving the Torah again, right? Like that your mind could be consumed by fire. Either you could be like the burning bush and not be consumed, or if you had made a mistranslation, you'd fuck things up. You could break your brain with exegesis, with reading. And I think that that's the balance. We need to do both, obviously, but like, I love the idea of like reading or clocking something brings in this time element as well. That like, because we read in sequential order, we read linearly. So what does it mean to you if we take the magic of reading as being vital to this time period, reading the room, reading all this stuff? What does the time component add to for us in terms of how we get to deeper meaning, or get to the larger reading, the more full clocking of how does clocking it, right, like make our reading better is the question I think I'm coming to.
Yeah. Well, you know, that is part of the reason why I do daily and weekly astrology forecasts, is because I want to know what time it is. And so if I can figure out what time it is, then that can help me to know which of the lessons are the ones that are likely to be most prevalent. It's a little bit akin to the idea that in a historical moment, then the people whose charts resonate with whatever transits are going on they become the key players in that moment. It is the same with ideas, and it's the same with feelings and thoughts and all of that sort of stuff. Like, the ones that resonate with the moment are the ones that float to the surface. And so especially when you get to like deep philosophical and religious text and stuff like that, mystic mystery traditions and that kind of thing, there's so much embedded in each of those stories and all of the readings that's part of the reason why you can read something like a religious text for your whole life and continue to get new things out of it, is because when you are ready for a new lesson, then a new lesson shows up for you, right? Because there is so much information embedded in it that you're not going to get all of it on the first time around. And you can continue to go back. And so it's this idea that, like, in maturity, you can read things that you had read in adolescence and you thought you knew what was going on in adolescence. And indeed, you did.
And you did. Yeah.
But new things have come to the surface given where you are in your life now, right?
Yeah.
And so it's this idea that the big life, the earth organism and then beyond, the whole cosmos exists in this life. And so as we progress through time and reach a different kind of maturity or something like that, then different lessons will come up through the reading and be the ones that are the star players in whatever moment is relevant now.
Right. And, to one of your points in the video too about, again, the changing is happening in part due to what you have interacted with at this given moment. So you read a text, and that text is now a part of how you understand that same text again when you come back to it. So the lessons your adolescence took from this particular myth informed the way that your early adulthood reads that same myth, even if it's only in tension, even if you end up disagreeing, with what you had done earlier. You can't have that disagreement without the earlier engagement. Like that, they're constant. That time aspect is there. Talking about shape and reading, one of my favorite books I've ever read is it's actually like an academic theory book, but it's called Thinking in Circles by Mary Douglas, and it's about the ring circle, the ring structure in traditionally, for example, in Old Testament writing. That if you don't know that these stories are constructed in the shape of mirroring pyramids or rings, then you don't understand how to read the meaning in the text. So the classic example is Abraham sacrificing Isaac on the mountain. And the text has matching phrase lines on both sides of the event, right? So that when he gets to the mount, if people don't know the story, God tells Abraham to take his son, up to his beloved son, the one who's been promised to him, who will be the future of everything. Take him up to the mountain, sacrifice him on the thing. He's like, oh, how are we feeling about that? That seems kind of intense. And God's like, get up there. The Lord will provide the sacrifice. He gets there, gets the dagger out, about to do the deed. And the angel stops him and says, look, there's a ram here for you to sacrifice instead. And he sacrifices the ram, and then they have a very awkward time coming down the mountain, I imagine, on the other side of that. When I was younger and I first heard this, I was like, fuck this. Like, fuck any kind of God who would tell you to take your kid up the mountain. Your answer should have been like, no. Like, I guess we're making new deals, And also fuck Abraham for taking his son up the mountain. What is this garbage? Everything else. But when you understand there's a ring cycle, there's a structure here, you actually anticipate, because of the way the story is structured and the verses are set up, that Abraham is actually testing God. So that when he's holding the knife up, he's not actually going to kill his son. He's like, you told me you would provide something. Here I am. You better fucking do it. Are you the God who says what he's going to do or not? It's a different vibe than he's definitely going to kill his son because God commanded him to. And not understanding that a lot of Christian scholars have completely misunderstood the meaning of the text. Or we could say created a new meaning from the text that is their interpretation. Then you can weigh against each other which one of these you'd rather live in. A man testing his God and saying, you better provide me the things you provide me. Or a God commanding his worshiper to do child murder. Right? Which reality tunnel do you want?
Yeah, Well, I don't think that you get either one or the other of those reality tunnels. You know, that sort of reminds me of the way that I often think about spellcraft, which is that I often regard casting a spell as a kind of announcement,
Sure.
rather than making the thing happen.
Right.
Right? It's not that by casting the spell you have done something that changes the shape of the world necessarily, but rather you show up and cast a spell and be like, hey, it turns out that this is the reality tunnel that we're in, so we're going to go do this one now, you know? And it sort of like, and then the thing comes to pass and you're like, oh, would you look at that?
That's really interesting. So my mom, being a very mystical Christian, would get tied in the knots of like, you can't force God to do things, right? Like, you know, prayer doesn't work like magic. You know, magic is like, we're doing this now, and prayer is like, can we please do this now? You know, but one of the things she used to think of is the person praying was the bridge to the miracle. That the miracle is always waiting to happen, and it just takes, because of free will or whatever, it takes us, you know, linking it in, being the bridge. Now, that's a different understanding. There are important differences in what you just said and that understanding of things, but they share some commonalities that are really interesting to think of. That like I'll say a loving universe for a second. We can fight about that in a minute, but a loving universe provides all positive options, and we have the chance to bring those things in. And look, sometimes you might be limited in what you can do. You might be choosing a best out of the circumstance, you know, astrology good sort of stuff. Like we can't have money fall from the sky right now, but we can dig some up out of the ground if we work real hard, you know, like it could be something like that. But you know, the idea that magic is helping to connect, create, invite in the better reality tunnel, and just shift over to that one is I think Dean Radin says some shit about that too, right? Like he's not sure if it's like reality selection or telepathy. Anyway, I can't remember. Science, magic, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. But yeah, that's a really interesting thing where two different worldviews can come to very similar understandings of the shape of how miracles or magic happens, right? Because there's something to the shape, right? Like
yeah. Well, you know, once you spend a little bit of time in the space, then you start to realize that miracles are actually happening. It's like, oh, like how do we account for this? Like we live, and it is my contention that everything, like there is no supernatural. Magic is super natural.
I really like that in the piece, by the way. Like, it's not supernatural, supernatural, bro. It's
exactly, you know. And so if miracles are happening, then they have to be in universe. Like there is space in the universe for miracles to happen. And so how does this turn out, you know? One of the things that you mentioned there about your mom's approach that I really resonate with is, so I used to play with this Jamaican singer, Nando Griffiths. He's like a #1 singer in Jamaica, and he and I did a bunch of like touring, and we played a bunch of shows and stuff. But one of my favorite of his songs to play was called Heart of a Lion. And in it, there is a line that says, when you pray, don't say please, say thank you.
Right.
You know?
That's
and
good.
so
that's good magic right there, man.
Right? He has I don't think he knows. I don't think he knows. He was channeled in that moment. It's amazing.
Sure.
But so on the one hand, there is an insistence on gratitude, right? Just like we can be grateful for the world as it is, and thank you so much for like the life. Well, I had a preacher for a long time who always said that if any day you wake up on top of the dirt not on top of you, that's a good day, you know? Okay. And we can be grateful for that. For sure. But then there's also like the kind of manipulation that can come with being like, thank you so much for doing this thing that you haven't done yet. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. I mean, it works on everybody. Do you know what I mean? Gods and
exactly.
You know what I mean? So
yeah.
And there's a shape to that. There's a, talking about shapes again, we have a lot of good stories, a lot of good things about gratitude and the importance of gratitude to how the world works. A lot of fairy tales regarding like, you get blessed because you said thank you, and like, sure, you can say that's trying to teach kids good manners, but why? Well, the answer is because it works. You know what I mean? Like, the world is a better place when this is the case. Animals display gratitude. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
There are cases of people helping an animal out of a trap. The animal comes and brings like fucking salmon to their house and shit. You know what I mean? Like, it's like there's a balancing there that's important. Yeah, I like the idea that that's one of the important shapes to learn. One of the important shapes to take is the larger shape of gratitude, and then the many smaller shapes underneath it. That was another thing I got thinking about during the video was there's big shapes and small shapes. Like, it's shapes all the way down, but like every other shape is sort of, I guess fractal would be the term, but I'm bad at actual geometry, and so I worry about that.
Sure.
But something is made of many other shapes. Throwing a good punch involves quite a lot of other shapes that you're making to get that shape. And I mean, you can make yourself crazy with this, trying to think about all the shapes at once. But and that's why the bigger concepts like gratitude, the idea that your stomach might be grateful for food that you put in it. You know what I mean? Like, you can take this as a law, not a law, but as a way things work in both small and large shapes. This is where I think that as above, so below thing is really useful, because it's like, it still works in the small level, it still works in the large level, but how that looks and how that looks like is going to change based on the circumstances quite a lot. Like, so, but yeah, I was thinking about how sometimes people can maybe, or I can feel you make a big statement like love is how the world works, or something like that. And people are like, well, I don't know about that. People hate each other all the time. But you can think about the smaller, more localized version to this, and the more you can break things down into smaller pieces when the big thing seems like it doesn't make sense to you. And that's actually really compelling. That's really hopeful to me to see the little shapes participating in the way.
Yeah, and it is by creating localized little shapes that we go about creating the more beautiful world that our hearts know is possible.
Yeah.
And I think that is really the strength of this moment when piracy rules the day. Like, if you can do anything that you want, then why not create a more beautiful world that your heart knows is possible, right? And it's my goal to give people the tools with which to do that.
I was served the other day an old Ricky Gervais joke, where somebody is like, well, if there's no heaven or no hell, if you're an atheist, what's stopping you from just murdering or raping as much as you want? He's like, nothing. I rape and murder exactly as much as I want to right now, which is none. Like that. Yeah. I don't want to. And also, it doesn't seem to stop people who do want to do it from doing it. They seem completely content to rape and murder if that's their game. You know what I mean? Like, absent punishment, or absent anything else. And and I think sometimes that's a really important thing to think with, of like, what do you really want to do? How do you want to be? And if you want to be a virtuous, good person, then start by doing that and seeing what comes out of it. I think sometimes, here's a question for you. Do you feel that there are sort of currents to the shapes? So in a sense of like, or a momentum. So like, you can get caught up in a shape that you maybe have not realized you're fully assenting to. I think a classic example would be sort of getting whipped up by patriotism, right? Into, you think you're in a story of, I'm defending my country, or I'm looking out for my neighbors, or my way of life's very important and I must fight for it. And that's often co-opted into, these 5 people are going to get real rich and a lot of people are going to die. Like that's, which is a different story that you're only seeing the patriotism part, right? Like your little shape, your current is the patriotism, but there's a larger shape that is also at work in the thing. So how do you think about the way that ideas move through a culture, or ideas can shift and grab you in this context?
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's absolutely, well, if we are looking at how things actually work, then we have to recognize that ideas have people.
Yeah.
At least as much as people have ideas, probably more. And so that's gonna happen. There's gonna be these currents of ideas they will probably be the ones of the moment. You know, that's part of the reason why I want to study astrology, so as to know which ones are going to be the ones that are relevant in this moment right now, on a day-to-day basis, and then, you know, as generations go and all of that, right? So it is good to pay attention to what all of that is and how that's going. You know, one of the things that I think with here when it comes to creating shapes is that, like, so I can shape my life in my localized environment, my apartment, my living room, and this kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like one of the things that I always think of is I can make it possible for me to do the things that are good for me by making it easy for me to do the things that are good for me. Like it's meal plan or meal prep first. Right. You know what I mean? Like I eat less junk food by preparing my meals beforehand. I make it possible for myself to do that, right? And so I don't spend too much time thinking with political systems, like is capitalism better, is socialism better, is, you know, like all these kinds of things. You and I have talked before about voter democracy. What we really need is a lottery. And I am 10 toes down on that right now. Like
it's starting to feel like a real good idea.
Right? Like it avoids the power hungry becoming super powerful. It provides an amazing incentive for the public education system to be bomb. Yeah, so, you know, like I think this would lift all ships. However, I also know that I'm a fucking lunatic and no one is ever going to go for this plan. So I keep my nose out of it for the most part. I just don't get into this fray for the most part. But what I would really love to see is an honest assessment of what actually happens in the world, how humans go on to behave, and given their circumstances, given the situations that people are actually in. And then so it's like the idea that, if what you're really into is rape and murder, then punitive laws don't stop you from doing that. And so, although a punitive law did stop you from punching a motherfucker in the face an hour ago, so like, there's that to think about.
Yeah.
And it works at some kind of scale, but it doesn't stop the thing from happening, right? And so then I think that we could think with better ways of like if the more beautiful world that our hearts know is possible is one that doesn't include violent crime, we could say, then how would we go about creating a space wherein that wasn't what we were doing, rather than trying to just like shame people and you know them until they stop, which clearly isn't happening.
I was going to say, clearly has not worked. We've tried this; it does not work. So there's a thing I've been thinking about with this exact idea, and also sort of mistranslation that I think is relevant. So I've gotten over the last year, I've spent a lot of time thinking with the Norse god Frey and his who's sort of god of kingship, a god of helping folks out. He's a sort of a harvest god, fertility god, and for a long time, the story about the Norse or the sort of Viking era people, right, as a group, was that Odin is the king of the gods, this war god, this death god, you know, and so that people sort of built stories out of that. Did a little more archaeology, and turns out that, sure, in some places that was true, but in a lot of major societies like Sweden, which is one of the biggest one of these groups, Frey is the guy who's the good harvest guy, the guy who's like, everybody should have some wealth, right? And So I've been reading more about him and thinking about kingship and stuff. And in this book I was reading, one of the gifts he brings is called frith, which is loosely translated as peace, right? So when everybody comes together at the assembly, the thing, a priest would declare that the frith of Frey is present in this place. That, you know, he's like you said, he's just sort of called it in. He's like, yep, it's here now. We're in this reality time. But the mistranslation had been a sort of mislearning, right? So we're looking at this now from the point of view of a post-Christian, post-modern understanding of what peace means as a situation where I don't hurt you, you don't hurt me, a sort of passive thing. Mm-hmm. But at the time, it actually meant something more like, I have established that for the purpose of this ritual space, we are family. We are kin. We are under each other's mutual protection. And killing you in this space is the same as killing my brother. It has all those taboos, right? So, but it's more than just we agree not to hurt each other. It's we take on the responsibility of looking out for each other. And those are different concepts, right? They have different shapes to what you do and how you interact and how you do things. And so it's interesting to think with shame and no, we've been trying that method, it is not working. What do we do if there's more of a mutual care, mutual responsibility narrative out there where it's like, hey man, and not even in the punishment sense, it's just like, we can't let Jim continue to murder everybody. It's bad for Jim. It's bad for everybody else. We have failed Jim in some way, right? Like, we got to look out for him. We got to stop it. It's not good for his soul to continue murdering everybody. And so what's interesting to me there is the shape of the whole thing of magic can declare that this state exists, right? You can use the ritual to instigate it, to bring in the spirit of Frey that is the spirit of Frith, and invoke that into the space. Yeah. Right.
You can use magic or spellcraft to instantiate the narrative form.
Yes.
That serves your better outcome.
Yeah. And you know, and again, it requires buy-in.
Yeah, for sure.
You're going to have some good magic if you want people to buy into this.
Yeah, well, you know, Thoth, Mercury.
Yep.
That's the god of magic, right? So like persuasion, argumentation, like cleverness, all of this is part and parcel with the thing, right? Like you gotta say stuff real good if you're gonna do good magic.
I don't think it's a mistake that the wealth harvest god is the one who brings this power, right? Like,
sure.
We all want to make some money. We all want to eat this winter. We got to take some time to work together to get, you know, so the mutuality is embedded into that concept there too.
What I'm interested in here is, so it's the way that leadership functions in what you've described versus what we currently experience for the most part. So one of the things that I think is like the best way to perform leadership in my experience as a leader, I've like directed bands and things like that, for example, and I've frequently been like the star player in the band as well. But then also in times when I was not the leader, but I have experienced leadership, the best leaders are the ones who all victories are because they are owned by the team, and all the failures are owned by the leader.
Right.
You know? And so what you said there was, we have failed Jim.
Right.
Because Jim is creating havoc in the community, right?
Right.
And so that to me is really interesting, this idea, like, how could we come to take better responsibility for ourselves, for our people, such that we can lead in ways that actually generate followers rather than, the autocratic, the emperor has no clothes, but I'm gonna not say anything about that and hope that he doesn't look over here kind of situation,
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot recently with no gods, no masters.
Yeah, sure.
And the ideas in anarchy of a natural hierarchy or a natural authority.
Totally.
That's not permanent. You know what I mean? In the sense that, like, for the purpose of this lottery or the purpose of this, we're going to make that happen. The purpose of this event.
All we can do is seed the idea. You know what I mean? If people can just think with it, just think, I understand that I'm crazy, but I was also crazy when I started saying that the moon was going to matter. And, like, here we are. So what if we just thought about it for a second? That's all I'm saying.
So the idea of, I almost want to, the terminology used is fine, but I almost want to throw the idea of joiners rather than followers, right? In the sense of, like, who's joining you in your cause, who's coming in.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so,
I don't know that. I don't know that. Like, great apes are gonna really go for that. You know what I mean? Like, it's a little bit like what I was saying before about like, some people are gonna get really nerdy about the structure of the world and the religion and all the stuff like that, and what the deep religious texts say, and then we want to study it and all that. And a lot of people are gonna be like, yeah, bro, like, what's the Lord's Prayer? I'm going to say it real quick and go about my day. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I feel like the concept of leaders and followers isn't going anywhere before the end of my life, we could say.
But let me give you an example of what I think would be something that would help with the whole community responsibility thing that I've experienced. So something that is different when you have kids is you spend a lot of time in playgrounds, and particularly when they're little, they're like 3, 4. Like, there's usually just sort of a mess of kids just kind of running all over each other at the playground. And it might bring you into a circumstance where, for whatever reason, you're the parent who's currently paying attention to what's happening, right? And one kid grabs another kid by the face and hits him with a rock, right? This kid starts crying. The kid, neither of these children are yours, right? In this
Okay.
They are playground kids. You're all here. You know what I mean? And now they're upset, right? Their parents they're not noticing just yet. Everybody's on their phones. They deserve to be. It's a hard job being a parent. You're just trying to get out there. Or you're the closest, right?
Sure.
You would be. Well, I was amazed to find how many people would not speak to someone else's kids in that circumstance. Not my business, not my circus, not my monkeys. And what I found was, when I did start saying things like, "Hey, man, we don't have to hit each other here." You know what I mean? Like, not really. I'm not trying to enforce some sort of punitive discipline, but just kind of like step in as an adult, as somebody who's there to look out for everybody, and just be like, "Hey, let's slow this down. We don't need to do this." Right? The kids responded positively. Most of the time, the parents responded positively. I got a couple, like, "How dare you speak to my child" kind of stuff, and I was like, usually by the parent whose kid was hitting people with rocks. To be clear, like, it's usually that parent. Sure, like, "How dare you speak to them?" You're like, I can see the cycle. But I think that's an example where currently the cultural moray is, if you don't know the parents, don't speak to the kid. And I think that's very different than the way I was brought up and the way that, like, the generations before me were brought up, where, like, any parent in the neighborhood could reasonably be like, "Stop hitting that kid in the face." Do you know what I mean? Like, and you were expected by all the, and if you were coming home and were like, "Dad, he told me to stop hitting that kid in the face," he'd be like, "Well, he was right." And you sometimes have to.
You were hitting that kid in the face. What the fuck?
Exactly. And sometimes you'd have to go and make an apology to the parent that you mouthed off to, in the middle of the thing. Like,
sure.
Again, speaking from personal experience, but the
shout out to the old heads in the room.
Exactly. But that's the. I feel like that's a good example of how we could start taking more responsibility for each other in a way that's not about, like, owning someone's life or telling them what to do so much as being like, hey, this is the culture that we're in here. We treat each other better than this, you know. Just,
and like taking a leadership role in that.
Yeah.
You know, like being kind of, you know, it sounds like what you're describing. I'm not a parent. I don't have any idea. But it sounds like what you're describing there is a little bit of like, most folks are not going to be the one who is spearheading that. Like we are going to have a better culture here on this playground kind of situation. And so it takes somebody to show up and be like, hey, we're not doing that. And then once you put yourself into that position, then it sort of like creates an opportunity for other people who are not necessarily trying to go that hard with it to be like, yeah, what he said.
Right. And you also have to buy into the shape, though. You know, there was a moment when I looked over and another mom was telling my son to behave. And at that point, you got to be like, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Behave, you know. And, you know, this is, you know, it would be better if we could all get together and talk this out. It'd be better if we could all have like a little parents meeting and be like, all right, we're all down with like no one eats the monkey bars this year. It's like, yeah, no more eating the monkey bars. That was a bad idea. Like, you know, that would be ideal. But in the meantime, we open up spaces for that, the more we step in, like you're talking about. Like, again, if we want the miracle of kids who hit each other in the face less with rocks, we got to be the bridge. We got to step in to do the stuff. You know?
Yeah, and it's, you know, it's also tangly out here because, you know, sometimes you're going to run into issues when you do that.
Yeah.
And, you know, and you sometimes are not as persuasive as you hoped you would be. And sometimes you just find yourself in a position where it's not going the way that you imagined it would go. You know,
I've had people not listen, and also some aggressive responses. And I have the advantage of my shape being a rather large male shape.
Yeah.
And
it goes a long way with that.
It goes a long way for people looking at me and being like, well, let's just let this ride a little bit. Do you know what I mean? And, you know, but I often think about, like, you know, and we've talked about this a little bit about redoing policing, right? And that, like, sometimes you do need a kind of big guy who knows how to, like, break up fights without hurting people too bad to be like, you can't get drunk and hit each other tonight. You know, like, we're not doing that.
Sure.
That's different than our current policing structure. But that is the shape of a sheriff or something, you know what I mean? Like that's a thing that humans may need. And I'll be honest, you kind of want that guy to be 6'5", 350. Do you know what I mean? It just like they're just less people think to take a shot at that guy, whether they can or not. They're just gonna be like, it's not great.
Yeah, maybe today is not the day. Maybe I don't need to. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. There's plenty to think with here, and there's plenty of ideas, and you know, what I end up saying throughout the course many times is that I don't claim to have the answers, but I do want to see people interrogating these kinds of questions in ways that make sense to their local communities, and just working with it in a way that could yield some different results. We've seen the kinds of results that we're getting. So what if we tried some other ways of thinking about stuff? We are in a moment where the old ways are not working anymore. Insofar as the old ways had been working before, they are not even working that well anymore. And so we've got to do something else. We got to try some new things. And that doesn't mean that we have to be completely divorced from the traditions. No. But it does mean that we're going to have to think with some new things. We're going to have to assemble a new way of being, and we're going to have to think with which direction. We're going to have to really think with which direction we're going to go. The prescribed directions aren't working anymore. And so we're going to have to think with how that's going to work. And so I aim to provide a structure through which people can do that kind of thinking.
And, you know, I think that's great, and I think it's important for us to do that kind of thinking because it allows us to show up better. And I think this is going to be a time period that's defined by who shows up and who gets into the mix. And you know, if you want reality to be different, you're going to have to start making some different realities. And no one's going to hand you a well-crafted, designed utopia. You're going to have to get out there and try to do what you can, you know. And again, I find that exciting and freeing, and you know, and I think that's a perspective. If people like it, they can take on. I really am not. I'm not in a doomer mood about how things are going. I think there's a lot of chance for us to do good, and that doesn't mean I'm not noticing things are hard. It doesn't mean I'm not aware of what's happening around me. But I think if we again, just trying to bring in a better reality tunnel, if you look at it as a time of opportunity to make something, to grab something beautiful, it's better than just sitting around being like, well, I guess we're fucked.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, that's ultimately the allure of the Wild West is that anything is possible out there, you know. And Trash Jones did a great tweet about that, which was like, me at age 22, anything is possible. And then me now, anything is possible.
Anything's possible. Have you, and I should round out on this a little bit, but have you watched Deadwood?
No.
Oh man, fantastic show. But it gets into a lot of this of like anything is possible, and a lot of bad stuff happens, and a lot of great stuff happens, and life happens. You know what I mean? And even down to the point of like, if you build a certain building in town, it changes the nature of the town itself, the structure, the shape, the opportunities, everything changes. So sometimes, you know, a whole episode, 2 or 3 episode arc can be about, are we building this thing in this town or not? Right. And what is that going to do to who we are? So it's fun. And as Wild West stuff goes, it's very thoughtful and interesting and, Shakespearean in its scope. So
word. Yeah. What I would really like to see is, not only a certain amount of planning around, like, if we build this thing, then what kind of effect is that going to do? I would love to see some planning around that, but then also a legitimate and sober look at what actually did happen, what actually is happening now that the thing is here. Yes. You know, like, according to our projections, it was going to go this way. It never goes according to the projections. What I always say in a divination space is no one does better than 70%. 0 people predict the future better than 70%. Yeah. 70% is major league. Most folks are not doing that. Yeah. So what's going on with the other 30%? Like, what's happening with that? And how do we adjust our course accordingly? That's really what I'm trying to get to happen here, is with Which Way to Wisdom, is like, what's happening, and if this is actually what's happening, then how do we shape ourselves in response to that?
Totally. Yeah, I mean, listen, if you guys haven't, you know, caught the workout bug at any point, this is a great way to experiment with this. I tweaked my back 2 weeks ago. Because I was in the middle of my good workout of doing all my stuff, blah blah blah. And Marissa was like, "But did you warm up? Did you do this on the day right after you spend all day? You know, 12. One of my days is real long in front of the computer. You know, 12 hours in front of the computer, no moving. Did you rush through shit because you just wanted to get something done in a time frame?" And I'm like, "These are all points I don't want to address." I had a good narrative about how I could just do this, but I had to look at what was happening, and my fucking back hurt, you know, and I wasn't happy about that, right? And I had to make changes, and so I just think there's so many good lessons and so much stuff around your own environment of like, I made this recipe, I decided to add paprika, it fucking sucks now, I should stop doing that, you know, like yeah. The wisdom is there for you, like, and this is one thing I like about, because you've talked about some of the stuff that's in the course and stuff already, like, I like about the approach is that it takes the small things and uses them as observation points that can be magnified. Like, it's not, you know, or not. That you can learn everything you need from where you put your shoes in the morning. That's an important thing. So,
yeah. So thanks. Thanks for being here. Let's check it out. Let's see what happens. And the folks who are listening along at home, Which Way to Wisdom will be out in just a minute, but a lot of it is going to come out here on the podcast as well. So you're going to be able to check in and see what's going on. And if you haven't done it, if you haven't gotten a reading and you want to see what the future of your own shape situation looks like, you should probably do that. If you haven't asked Brian about what shape the Earth is taking for geomancy readings, his should be great. It's super good for tactical advice. Like I'm in a position that I find uncomfortable and I want to know how to get out of this position and what kinds of things I can do to make it better. Or one of the things that I talk to Brian a lot about when I get geomancy readings is like, what is happening with this relationship or this situation, this circumstance? I don't understand what's happening and what my role should be in it. And geomancy is very frequently clarifying for that. So if you go to wilkinsbrian.com, then you can get that kind of insight for your damn self. So you should totally check that out.
Thank you, sir. And if you're ever looking for me on social stuff, Substack's the only place you're going to find me these days. That's just where I'm hanging.
Buster.
So if you want to hit me up there, that's where you want to grab me. And I'm happy to hear from people in that space too. Just like, man, short form videos eat my brain so bad. I can't do anything else.
Yeah, it's real. It's real.
If you can handle it, good for you. I cannot. That's not my powers.
I find myself in a space where I'm like, well, if we out here dealing with the devil, I guess that we gotta be in a dangerous place.
Well, and it's why I stayed on the Substack stuff too. You know what I mean? It's not. I'm not gone. I'm just trying to do my best.
Everybody doing their best out here.
And, of course, the class is interesting, but just as a reminder, Mr. ZamboniFunk does give excellent astrology readings, and he hates it when I do this. But, I also go to him quite a lot for not only my year ahead, but for questions on things, bugging him about astrology. And, again, the readings are often much more about the story you're in than you might think in terms of, like, if you've been to other astro readings. I look ahead for what's going to be happening in the world so that I can make changes, so that I can do stuff. And we have a little bet going on about a particular thing. We'll see if it lands in December the way he said. And to be fair to you on this one, you said it was a possibility in December. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
We shall see. We shall see. Peace and blessings, family. Thank you, Brian, for being here. I look forward to the next one. And we will keep it pushing in the meantime. Yep. As Juicy J said, the hustle continues. Peace and blessings, fam.
Good night, everybody.